Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons, and love are told. Go ahead and like, share with your friends, and subscribe. I trudged into my living room one quiet Thursday evening, my phone buzzing incessantly on the coffee table. It was another message from Celeste, my wife, and the words made my stomach twist. Extending my stay, don't wait up, it read. At first, I tried to shrug it off. She'd been traveling for a work conference in Chicago. She always had an excuse for staying longer, for missing dinners, for skipping phone calls. But something about this message felt different. Casual, distant, almost too light for someone supposedly exhausted by back-to-back meetings. I sank into the couch, staring at her picture on my phone. Celeste's smile was the same one I had married 2 years ago, but lately it felt like a mask. I scrolled through her previous messages from the trip. They were full of cliches about the amazing experience and great networking opportunities. But there were gaps, long stretches of silence that made no sense for someone so dedicated to her job. A creeping suspicion began to wrap itself around me, cold and tight, and I knew I couldn't ignore it. I picked up my phone and called the hotel concierge where she claimed to be staying. The person on the other line verified a reservation, but it wasn't under the name of the conference hotel. It was a boutique in a few blocks from downtown Chicago. My pulse quickened. Why would she stay somewhere else if she was supposed to be attending an important work event? I scribbled down the details, feeling the mix of betrayal and anger bubbling under my skin. Still uncertain, I tried calling her supervisor, someone named Martin, hoping for a simple explanation. Instead, Martin's voice carried surprise and concern. Celeste? She didn't come in today? She said she had a stomach bug? The words hit me like a brick. My hand shook slightly, but I forced calm as I asked questions. He confirmed that he had no knowledge of a conference this week, and that Celeste had only mentioned being out sick. That was the last confirmation I needed. The life I had been living, the trust one had placed in her, had been built on lies. I pulled out my laptop and began piecing together a timeline. Texts, emails, hotel bookings, and her social media check-ins, everything painted a picture of deception. She wasn't at a work event. She wasn't sick. She was somewhere else entirely, and her online check-ins pointed directly to a hotel I knew had romantic connotations, not professional meetings. I remember feeling my chest tighten, a mix of hurt, disbelief, and a rising heat of anger. How long had she been doing this? How many little lies had I accepted without question? I needed advice, but not from friends who might sway me with pity or bias. I called my brother-in-law Adrian, a seasoned divorce attorney. His voice was calm, measured, the kind that cut through emotional fog. I walked him through the evidence, showing him the texts, hotel reservations, and discrepancies. He didn't need convincing. He only asked about our prenuptial agreement, our financial situation, and if I was prepared to move forward. By the end of the call, I had a clear plan forming. Gather everything, confront her with undeniable proof, and start the process of ending the marriage on solid legal ground. I remember sitting in my office, staring at the screen, and drafting notes as if they were a battle plan. I detailed every inconsistency, every lie, every moment I had trusted her blindly. My hands typed automatically, fueled by shock, betrayal, and a determination that surprised even me. I wasn't going to be blindsided anymore. I would take control of this situation, and I would ensure there was no ambiguity when I confronted her. Her texts continued to arrive, cheerful and casual, talking about the amazing conference sessions, and how she couldn't wait to share ideas with her team. Each message made my stomach churn. I read them over and over, not just for proof but for the sheer audacity. The casual lies stung the most. The one that made me laugh bitterly was her description of a hotel spa she loved, ironically, the same hotel I had verified she was actually staying at. Every word was a thread, and I began weaving them into the evidence that would form the spine of our confrontation. I thought about calling her immediately, but I knew better. I couldn't let anger dictate my moves. I needed everything in place: legal advice, evidence, a plan. So I started documenting the texts, screenshots, and timestamps. Every detail mattered because this wasn't just about my pride. It was about making sure that any claim she could make against me would crumble under scrutiny. Every lie she had told me, every sweet nothing that had been a poison, was now ammunition for truth. Late that evening, I sat quietly in the dim light of our kitchen. The city outside was alive, the hum of traffic drifting through the slightly open window. I imagined Celeste there, maybe laughing, maybe oblivious to the storm I was quietly assembling back home. I realized, with a sinking mix of sadness and rage, that this wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a deliberate deception, a violation of everything I had held sacred in our marriage. Sleep didn't come that night. My mind kept running through scenarios, each one more detailed than the last. How I would confront her, how she would respond, how I would maintain control without letting emotion sabotage the plan. I thought about the kind of person I had trusted, and how little I truly knew. Every smile, every touch, every whispered promise suddenly felt like a staged act, a performance I had applauded without realizing I was being misled. By morning, I had decided on my course. I would return home, lay out the evidence, and watch the truth finally crack the veneer of lies she had so carefully built. My hands didn't shake this time. They were steady, precise, ready. The betrayal had been painful, but it had also sharpened me, made me clearer, more determined. I knew what had to be done, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of empowerment. I remember the moment I drafted the confrontation text. Not angry, not accusatory, just factual. We need to talk. I know the truth. Come home. I hit send and immediately felt a mixture of dread and relief. Dread, because the confrontation would be explosive. Relief, because the weight of suspicion, of waiting and wondering, was finally lifted. The next few hours would change everything. I didn't know if she would cry, scream, or beg, but I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The day stretched slowly, the hours ticking by with agonizing precision. I checked my phone obsessively, watching for her location updates, her read receipts, the slightest sign of acknowledgement. And then a ping, a response from her. It was short, almost dismissive. On my way. That was it. No explanation, no attempt at justification. I felt a strange calm descend on me. The calm of someone ready to face a storm they had long anticipated. When she walked through the door, I was waiting with the folder of evidence and my brother-in-law's notes. I remember looking at her, really seeing her for the first time since the trip began, and feeling an odd mixture of pity and revulsion. The woman who had sent those texts, who had built a life of lies, was standing before me, unaware of how thoroughly I had documented every betrayal. Our conversation was brief, measured, and almost clinical. I laid out the evidence point by point, letting the facts speak where words would falter. Her face went through the usual stages of disbelief, anger, and finally, a resigned shame. She tried to speak, to deflect, to twist the narrative, but every lie she attempted was immediately countered by proof I had gathered meticulously. I watched as the carefully maintained persona she had presented for months crumbled before my eyes, leaving only the raw, uncomfortable truth exposed. It was over in less than an hour. The realization hit her, the undeniable truth that her deception was no longer a secret. I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for what I had lost, the trust, the companionship, the life we had built together. Relief because the veil of lies had finally been lifted, and I could see the path forward clearly. No more wondering, no more guessing, no more being deceived. As I prepared to take the next steps, drafting legal documents and consulting further with Adrian, I couldn't help but reflect on the odd clarity betrayal brings. In the midst of hurt, anger, and disbelief, there is an undeniable truth. Once someone shows you who they really are, you don't have to spend your life believing the mask they wear. Celeste had shown me hers. And now, it was my turn to respond, not with violence, not with recklessness, but with precision, dignity, and undeniable evidence. When I returned home later that week, the air felt different, heavier somehow, like the calm before a storm. I had spent days meticulously organizing everything. Celeste's belongings, the evidence of her deceit, and the divorce papers that Adrian had drafted with careful attention to every legal nuance. I didn't rush. I didn't slam doors or yell. I wanted the confrontation to be clear, undeniable, and devoid of theatrics. What I wanted most was for the truth to land so firmly that there would be no wiggle room for excuses or manipulation. I remember opening the garage door, and seeing her things stacked neatly in boxes, shoes aligned like soldiers, and personal items carefully arranged. I didn't touch them. I let the organization speak for itself. When Celeste finally walked through the door, her smile was gone. Her usual confidence was replaced with a hesitant uncertainty that made her almost unrecognizable. I handed her the folder with the papers and the evidence of her lies. She stared at it for a long, tense moment, her lips pressed tightly together, eyes darting between the divorce papers and the documentation of her indiscretions. I don't understand, she finally whispered, voice trembling slightly. Why are you doing this? I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch, letting her feel the weight of her actions. Because, I said calmly, this is the life you chose. Every lie, every hidden meeting, every deception, it all adds up. I can't live like this and I won't. I watched her face as the realization hit. Confusion gave way to anger, anger to panic, and finally to bargaining. She begged, she pleaded. She tried every emotional lever she could find, but the evidence was unassailable. Every attempt to manipulate me faltered, leaving only raw vulnerability. Over the next few days, the dynamic between us escalated. She called relentlessly, showing up unannounced at my workplace, attempting to involve my parents, and even sending messages to friends and colleagues painting herself as the victim. I stayed calm, documenting everything. The prenuptial agreement she had insisted upon at the time of our marriage became my shield. Because of it, the divorce was swift. She would receive nothing beyond what she had brought into the marriage, and she would be responsible for my legal fees. The power she had tried to wield over me, the attempts to twist perception, all collapsed under the combined weight of evidence and contractual clarity. Then an unexpected twist occurred. Kevin, the man she had been seeing, was also married. I learned this when Chloe, his wife, contacted me. She had hired a private investigator and compiled a mountain of evidence against both of them. When she reached out, I was cautious, uncertain how much she knew or what her intentions were. But when we compared notes, the layers of deceit unraveled even further. The affair that had seemed private, almost shameful in its secrecy, became a public mosaic of lies and betrayal. Celeste's world, which had felt controlled and unassailable, was crumbling rapidly. Chloe and I spent hours piecing together the narrative. We shared screenshots, messages, hotel receipts, everything that revealed not just infidelity but the audacity of the deception. We were both victims, betrayed by people who had once seemed trustworthy, and yet there was an odd sense of solidarity in the discovery. Together, we realized that the lies had not just targeted us individually, they were systemic, a carefully constructed web that each participant had thought they could manipulate without consequence. The irony was bitter, but it also underscored the absolute necessity of accountability. Celeste's response to this growing exposure was frantic. She tried calling me, then Chloe, then anyone who would listen. Her career began to suffer as well. Her employer found out about the lies she had told to justify her absence and terminated her employment. Attempts to claim unemployment were denied. She started a blog, attempting to rewrite her story, portraying herself as a victim of narcissistic abuse, soliciting donations under the guise of personal hardship. It was surreal, watching the narrative she had tried to control unravel in real time, replaced by the stark reality of her choices. The personal attacks escalated too. Her mother and relatives harassed me and my family, attempting to intimidate or provoke me. But I remained calm, armed with documentation and legal counsel. Each action they took only reinforced the clarity of my path. Maintain composure, let the law work, and do not engage in reactive behavior that could compromise my position. The sense of control, once lost to deceit and betrayal, returned piece by piece. Amid the chaos, Kevin's situation deteriorated. Once his affair was exposed, his life shifted dramatically. He lost credibility, faced the collapse of his own marriage, and like Celeste had little recourse. At one point he reached out to me, trying to persuade me to reconcile with Celeste so that she would leave him alone. I listened politely but made it clear. There would be no reunion, no second chances. The deception had run its course, and the consequences were inevitable. As the legal proceedings moved forward, the atmosphere between all parties remained tense. Celeste's calls, attempts at bargaining, and even confrontational visits were meticulously documented. Each act became part of the undeniable record of her behavior, underscoring the reality that actions have consequences, and manipulation cannot always bend the arc of justice. By the time the divorce was finalized, the outcome was unambiguous. Celeste received nothing beyond what she had brought into the marriage and was ordered to cover my legal fees. The law had acted decisively, and I could finally begin to reclaim the life that had been disrupted by deceit. I remember the day the final papers were signed vividly. The relief was palpable, a mixture of closure, vindication, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing truth and justice aligned. Celeste left the house for the last time with her belongings, her demeanor now a muted reflection of the brash confidence she had once wielded. It was over. The storm had passed, and what remained was the clarity and freedom that comes when deception is fully exposed and addressed. In the aftermath, I took time to reflect. The betrayal had been painful, even traumatic, but it had also been illuminating. I understood how easily people could hide their true selves behind charm and routine, and I recognized the importance of vigilance, evidence, and emotional self-control. Celeste's world had crumbled because she had built it on lies, and it was a sobering reminder that choices, no matter how private they seem, eventually surface. Connecting with Chloe was another lesson in unexpected solidarity. Sharing the experience with someone else who had been wronged by the same individual brought both insight and a strange sense of camaraderie. Together we compared evidence, verified claims, and acknowledged the patterns of behavior that had led to mutual betrayal. There was no joy in the pain, but there was clarity, and that clarity became a foundation for moving forward without resentment or unfinished business. By the time the legal dust settled, the narrative that Celeste had tried to control was fully dismantled. Her attempts to manipulate perceptions at work, in the family, in public had failed. My focus had been unrelenting. Maintain composure, rely on evidence, and let the law act decisively. The result was a clean break, both legally and emotionally, and a foundation for the next phase of my life, free from deceit, manipulation, and betrayal. The experience reinforced the truth that actions have consequences, and people ultimately reveal who they are through choices, not words. Celeste's choices had defined her path, and my careful, measured response had ensured that truth, fairness, and justice prevailed. It was a sobering, difficult, yet ultimately empowering experience, one that reshaped my understanding of trust, accountability, and the importance of standing firm in the face of deception. The weeks following the divorce were oddly liberating. Celeste's life continued to spiral downward in ways that felt almost cinematic. She was unable to regain her footing professionally. Her attempts to salvage her reputation through social media and her blog were met with skepticism, criticism, and in many cases, ridicule. People could see through the performative victimhood she tried to project. Watching this unfold, I felt a quiet sense of justice. There was no need for me to gloat or intervene. Her choices had caught up with her, and the consequences were visible to everyone who knew her story. I focused on rebuilding my own life, not with vengeance or bitterness, but with clarity and intent. My promotion at work had been announced just a week after the divorce, a reward for the focus, dedication, and composure I had maintained throughout the turmoil. With my career moving forward and my personal life untangled from deception, I finally allowed myself to open up emotionally again. It was at this point that I met Naomi, someone entirely different from anyone I had known before. Grounded, honest, and genuinely caring. Our connection developed naturally, free from the shadows of lies and betrayal that had haunted me for years. Meanwhile, the fallout from Celeste's affair created ripple effects beyond my immediate circle. Kevin, her secret lover, faced total collapse. His wife, Chloe, filed for divorce with irrefutable evidence, leaving him not only divorced but financially strained and socially isolated. The arrogance and recklessness that he had shown throughout the affair now came back to him in full force. There was a strange poetic symmetry in the downfall of both Celeste and Kevin. Their lives, once filled with secrecy and deceit, were reduced to chaos and humiliation, a reminder that betrayal rarely remains hidden forever. Celeste, desperate to regain some semblance of control, attempted to reach out to me multiple times. She called, texted, and even showed up at my workplace, each time meeting the same response: polite, firm, and unyielding. She tried to leverage every possible angle, appealing to pity, stirring guilt, attempting to evoke old memories, but the divorce papers and documented evidence created an impenetrable barrier. Her bargaining failed, her anger simmered, and eventually, her attempts became erratic and desperate. Watching her unravel was difficult to witness, but there was also a clear lesson. Actions have consequences, and those who manipulate trust often find themselves isolated by the very deceptions they once wielded. Chloe. Insights about how our lives had been manipulated. There was no malice or bitterness toward each other, only a mutual understanding of how betrayal can blind even the most careful observers. Chloe's compassion, coupled with her insistence on clarity and truth, reminded me that accountability is not just about punishment, it's about understanding, learning, and moving forward. Our shared experience underscored the importance of vigilance, self-respect, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths directly. As for Celeste, her financial instability deepened. She was denied unemployment benefits, lost multiple potential job opportunities due to her dishonesty, and eventually settled into a series of low-paying, precarious jobs, including working at a mall kiosk. From the outside, it looked almost like a steep reversal of fortune. The woman who had once projected confidence and control now struggled daily to regain independence and dignity. Yet, despite the personal satisfaction one might derive from witnessing her downfall, I remained focused on my own trajectory, knowing that my life was moving in a healthier, more fulfilling direction. My new relationship with Naomi brought a lightness and stability I hadn't felt in years. We traveled together, laughed easily, and shared plans for the future without the shadow of mistrust or manipulation. There was even a humorous, almost surreal moment when I realized that the hotel loyalty points Celeste had accumulated during her affair, which had been meticulously documented, could be repurposed. Naomi and I used those points for a weekend getaway, an ironic twist that made both of us laugh and underscored the absurdity of the situation we had survived. Life, I realized, had a way of balancing itself, often in ways that felt almost karmic. Reflecting on the entire experience, I understood the depth of the lessons it carried. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild, but clarity, preparation, and composure can restore a sense of control. People reveal themselves not through what they promise but through what they do, and it is crucial to observe patterns, verify claims, and never ignore intuition. The betrayals I endured were painful, but they also provided a framework for discernment, resilience, and personal growth. The clarity I gained from facing deception head-on allowed me to embrace new opportunities, develop stronger relationships, and approach life with renewed confidence. The emotional journey had been intense. Shock, disbelief, anger, sadness, and finally empowerment. I realized that confronting betrayal isn't about vengeance alone. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your sense of self. By documenting every lie, consulting with professionals, and approaching the situation strategically, I ensured that justice was not only served but also measured and fair. Celeste's attempts to manipulate reality crumbled under the weight of documented truth, proving that integrity and preparation are powerful tools in the face of deception. Even as I moved forward with my life, the lessons from the experience remained vivid. Every interaction, every decision, and every moment of trust now carried a heightened awareness of human behavior and the importance of boundaries. I learned to balance empathy with caution, understanding with skepticism, and hope with realism. It wasn't about cynicism. It was about cultivating a practical awareness that allows one to navigate relationships and life with wisdom and strength. Life, after all, has a way of delivering poetic justice. Celeste's downfall, Kevin's collapse, and the exposure of lies were stark reminders that choices have consequences, and that the truth, however delayed, has a way of surfacing. In the same breath, the emergence of Naomi and the restoration of stability in my life highlighted the resilience of the human spirit. We rebuild, we adapt, and we find joy even after betrayal. The experience became a narrative of personal growth, emotional intelligence, and the quiet, satisfying balance that follows chaos. Now, when I look back, I see the entire journey as a sequence of revelations. Celeste's texts, her secretive hotel stays, and the carefully hidden affair were the starting points. The confrontation, the divorce, and the unraveling of both her life and Kevin's were the consequences. And the restoration of my own life, coupled with new love and stability, was the culmination of a living testament to resilience, preparation, and the inevitability of truth prevailing. In the end, I learned to trust my instincts, rely on evidence, and prioritize self-respect over emotion-driven decisions. The story isn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It's about accountability, clarity, and the satisfaction of seeing justice realized in a way that is measured, fair, and morally grounded. Life moves forward, but the lessons endure, shaping how we approach relationships, challenges, and the inevitable complexities of human behavior. For anyone watching, take this as a cautionary tale. Believe people when they show you who they are. Always verify and never ignore the red flags in a relationship. The experience may be painful, but it teaches you to navigate life with eyes wide open, strength in your heart, and a commitment to your own dignity. And remember, sometimes, life even rewards you in small, humorous ways. You just need to keep moving forward. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, and leave your thoughts or lessons learned in the comments. Your engagement helps more people hear stories of resilience, justice, and personal growth. And I'm grateful for each of you who supports this channel. Moral lesson. Betrayal hurts because it comes from the people we trust most, but the true lesson lies in how we respond. When someone deceives you, it's a test of patience, awareness, and self-respect. By documenting actions, seeking guidance, and confronting situations with clarity rather than emotion, you regain control and protect your dignity. Life rarely allows shortcuts to justice, but persistence, preparation, and integrity often ensure that truth prevails. Witnessing the downfall of those who lied, manipulated, or betrayed reminds us that choices have consequences, and the damage done often returns to the instigator. Equally important is the restoration of your own life. Finding new connections grounded in honesty, stability, and genuine care reinforces the idea that growth follows pain. Humor, perspective, and even small ironies can provide light in dark times, showing that life has a way of balancing itself. Ultimately, this story illustrates resilience, the power of truth, and the wisdom in observing actions over words. Trust your instincts, protect your boundaries, and always check the facts. Pain may be inevitable, but healing, justice, and personal growth are always possible when you respond with clarity, patience, and integrity.